Day one, Power Girl just didn't really work. It tied into all the events and all that kind of stuff. Nobody really cared because it was never really Power Girl. And Leah Williams is the creator behind this. And Leah Williams kind of burned out at Marvel, essentially creating pseudo-bimbo comedic comic books. They're supposed to be funny, but they're not really funny. They're aimed, at 30-year-old women that think nailing a different guy every single night of the week is like peak women's empowerment. That's basically who this comic book is designed for. They've never really worked. None of the stuff Leah Williams has done has worked ever. She started out kind of on X-Men, flamed out there, didn't really work at Marvel, comes over to DC. She's been doing Power Girl. That didn't work. She also did that Gotham City Sirens book, which is exactly the same thing. You are able to generate some sales with these type of comic books because you get very risque or skimpy covers out of them, specifically featuring very attractive female characters. But there's never really been an audience for this type of comic book for Marvel or DC, but they continued on with this for like 2 years. And it's kind of interesting when you look at the comic books, just in the mainstream American comic book market that have really worked, targeting specifically women or attracted that female audience that showed up and made the books a big success. It's like Saga, Wicked and Divine, which certainly have a little bit of comedy in them, but nothing along the lines of what Leah Williams has been doing for about, 8 years, maybe a little bit longer than that in the American comic book industry. And her sensibilities have never, ever been able to attract that female audience that Marvel and DC would like. That certainly came out for projects like Saga and Wicked and Divine. Now, obviously, Wicked and Divine is already done. Kieran Gillen did that one for a while, but it was successful. Saga did take a 2-year hiatus, so it's far less successful than it used to be, but that was the book that really garnered a large female audience and actually got them into comic book shops, at least every month. But projects like Power Girl and Gotham City Sirens have never done this, so this is really good news for DC Comics, who appear to be perhaps turning a corner right now. It's time to get rid of some of the dead weight, and that includes things like Power Girl, Fire and Ice, When Hell Freezes Over. That includes crap like the Harley Quinn Fartacular. You got to cut that kind of stuff out and maybe take these kind of risks later on once you've actually reestablished your audience. DC Comics has reportedly canceled its Power Girl series, with the final issue being number 20, set to release April 23rd. After a run that began in September of 2023 as part of the Dawn of DC initiative, according to Screen Rant, the cancellation was hinted at by the absence of solicitations in May of 2025, sparking speculation among fans that the series has quietly been axed. This move comes nearly 2 years after the series launch, but for many, it feels like a decision that should have been made much sooner. 12 months too late, to be exact, given the ongoing struggles that the book faced from the start. Nobody really showed up for Leah Williams' Power Girl bimbo comics that isn't really Power Girl, that features her with like a little sidekick, got a cat. Everybody knows that, super-powered women with cats is really spectacular. See also Captain Marvel and the enormous success that went on over there. And there were things that were going on around Power Girl and Superman that were very, very successful. House of Brainiac, I believe DC Comics would tell you that event was a success and Power Girl was the aberration. It was the thing tied into the successful event that literally didn't do anything. It didn't get better or anything. Nobody even noticed that it was there. And this book is just sitting there languishing. And the worst part is, of course, if you're a Power Girl fan, you're expecting a Power Girl series. And in many respects, this might not even be Leah Williams' fault, because she did say specifically in an interview, I guess she wasn't much of a Power Girl fan. She was contacted by DC, offered the gig. She decided to take the gig and said, hey, what should I go be reading at? What should I be looking at for inspiration on what my Power Girl is going to be? And they're like, don't read the comic books. Go read the Wikipedia page. And then we want to see your spin on Power Girl, which is great if it's John Byrne, which is great if it's Chris Claremont, which is great if it's Jeff Johns or somebody with some modicum of success in the industry. But when it's Leah Williams, who cannot figure out what comic book readers actually want to see, she probably needed a lot more guidance with this. And a lot of people notice that this had nothing to do with actual Power Girl, because Power Girl fans in particular never warmed to this iteration of the character under writer Leah Williams. The series aimed to give Power Girl a fresh start, abandoning her Karen Starr identity for her new name, Paige Stetler, in a comedic tone that leaned heavily into her relationships with characters like Harley Quinn and Crush, while distancing her from the traditional ties to the JSA and JLI. However, this shift didn't resonate with longtime fans. A Reddit user captures the sentiment stating, Leah Williams's take feels like it's trying to make Power Girl into something she's not, more of a quirky modern heroine than the confident no-nonsense powerhouse I grew up with. It's like they're ashamed of her history. Fans felt the series stripped away what made Power Girl iconic, replacing her legacy with a tone and direction that didn't honor her roots, leading to widespread disappointment. When Reddit is out there talking about how bad your comic book is, you've done something wrong. You're not allowed to really criticize comic books in Reddit. You will be essentially banned. But Power Girl was so bad, you could just talk about how it had nothing to do with Power Girl. And Power Girl, while it doesn't have the fan base of a Superman, a Batman, a Flash, or even a Wonder Woman, Power Girl at least does have fans, and they want to show up for a Power Girl series, but they actually want to see a Power Girl in there. And Power Girl actually has a pretty cool history, you know, a version of Kara Zor-El from another multiverse that gets sucked into our Earth Prime and is a person out of place that doesn't really have a place, trying to find where she fits in. That's a struggle that a lot of people can relate to, feeling like you're out of place or inadequate, or maybe there's already somebody there that's doing what you want to do, but doing it better. And that's an interesting character. Unfortunately, we just decided to flush all that, give her a new identity, give her a completely different personality, and then act like it was a Power Girl series. And it just never, ever worked. And it was definitely apparent very early on in the sales, because they tell an even grimmer story, showing the book struggled commercially from the very beginning. According to sales rankings, Power Girl #1 debuted in September 2023 at a modest number 36, a very lukewarm start for a new series. By March, Power Girl 7 had already dropped to number 76, and the downward trend continued relentlessly. 82 in April, 87 in May, 93 in June, 98 in July. By September 2024, Power Girl #13 had fallen out of the top 200 entirely, and by February of 2025, the series remained unranked, indicating little sales or interest in the series. These dismal sales figures, consistently languishing in the triple digits for nearly a year, suggest DC should have pulled the plug much, much earlier, around April of 2024, rather than letting the series limp along for another 12 months of absolute failure, delivering a Power Girl comic book that Power Girl fans couldn't even recognize the character in. And it was apparent almost immediately in the sales. It just dropped, essentially becoming a completely irrelevant series based on sales rankings for like a year. Why did DC Comics wait this long to cut out a series that just clearly wasn't working? I don't even get it. And why does Leah Williams, and I don't have a personal problem with Leah Williams. I'm sure she's a nice person. I've heard from people that know her, probably be fun to go get a daiquiri with or something like that. But she's proven time and time again that her story sensibilities, her writing style, does not fit Marvel or DC or any mainstream comic book line. Do I think Leah Williams would have a place maybe in a graphic novel section aimed at a very specific audience that wasn't superheroes whatsoever? Perhaps. But even then, I think she's just not a good writer. I don't think that she can execute anything that she wants to do, because her jokes aren't funny, her stories aren't exciting, her characterization is all over the place. There's nothing really to point at that's actually good when it comes to Leah Williams' writing. Other than you get really cool bimbo comic books, that means you can get really skimpy covers, and there are some thirsty fanboys out there that will buy covers like that over and over again, but they don't read the book. That's an enormous problem. That's been a problem for DC and Marvel for quite some time. It feels like DC's turning the corner, and this is an amazingly smart move to remove stuff like this. It's time to get rid of the Joanne stares. I'm all for bringing in some top-flight female comic book writing talent to DC and Marvel Comics. I think we could use the change. But we got to stop going out there and finding the Mariko Tamakis and the Jadzia Axelrods and the Tini Howards and the Leah Williams and obviously the Joanne Stares, because what they are doing does not fit this audience whatsoever. It doesn't fit the brand or the franchises, and all it does is manage to alienate fans. And then obviously the Leah Williams, the Tini Howards of the world get a lot of feedback that's very, very negative because their books are really bad. And they probably don't deserve it because their books should never, ever have been released into a market that's like 70% men over the age of 25. I don't think these books are appropriate for girls that are 12, but I also don't think there are a lot of women out there that are 30 that are really just clamoring for bimbo comic books. Maybe there's an audience, but it's certainly not in the direct market. It's certainly not at Marvel and DC. And I think the sales time and time again on Leah Williams comic books essentially reflect that. She's never had a single good idea at Marvel or DC. It's time for her to go on and find whatever her niche, her audience is, and find out where they actually exist, because it's not here, and she's had more than enough chances at this point. And the worst thing is Power Girl isn't Superman. Power Girl's not Batman. Power Girl's not even Aquaman. Power Girl's more akin to a character like Hawkman. And if you get a bad Power Girl run, it sucks because the sales aren't going to be good, and you won't get another run for 5 to 10 years. So I feel very bad for Power Girl fans, because this is what you get for the next decade. Maybe when we get to the 2030s, they will decide to test the waters on Power Girl again. And maybe then you'll actually get a Karen Starr story, an actual Power Girl story. They'll actually go read the comic books and make sure that the characterization is right and the story fits the character. But this time around, it just wasn't meant to be. But DC do that from the very beginning. The sales told them the entire time, this isn't working out, yet they held on for at least 12 months too long. Absolutely ridiculous stuff. But thankfully, they finally have righted this wrong, and this absolutely atrocious Power Girl run is at an end. And this is what we need. More bad comic book runs ending. Marvel, follow this lead and start canceling a bunch of your crap that ain't working right now. I'm looking at Iron Man. I'm looking at Exceptional X-Men. In fact, I'm looking at almost the entire X-Men line, if we're being completely honest. There's a lot of stuff at Marvel that needs to be addressed real soon and probably get canceled off and actually bring in somebody with talent. Not Leah Williams, obviously. If you appreciate this kind of analysis about what's going on in the comic book industry, there's one place you can get it. That's Think Critical YouTube. And if you would like to support the mission that we have covering the news, comic book reviews, all that kind of stuff, there's one place to do it. It's Think Critical Patreon. There's a link in the video description. There's a button right here. And we got awesome podcasts for you to enjoy every single day of the week. Hope to see you there very soon.